Alright, welcome back to the 5.3 swap. Got another update for you. This is episode 2, I think. So, been working on the harness quite a bit lately. Ended up having to shorten some wires at this end and routed everything. I actually took and spooled up all of the connectors back at the computer itself, and then I ran one connector at a time so that I could get the right lengths to fit in the engine compartment. And then this is all reclaimed split loom off of the Jeep and the Yukon harness. So I've got pretty much enough to do everything. Using 3 different kinds of tape on this. So I'm using normal vinyl electrical tape for just to tack some of the spots together to make sure everything kind of stays lined up. And then I got some people call it Tessa tape, but it's like the fabric kind of tape that OEMs use to wrap their harnesses. So the stuff is pretty cool. It's not cheap though. It's like $5 a roll, I think, something like that, $5 or $6 a roll. And then I also got this stuff, which is Taeyong tape, made in Korea. Anyway, this is non-adhesive vinyl wrap tape that, at least on the Yukon, and I think the Jeep had it too, where they'll take and they'll wrap this stuff from one junction to the next and basically tie it, wrap it over itself, run it to the end, wrap it over itself, and then they use the fabric stuff at the junction points so that everything stays nice and covered and you don't get dirt and schmutz and stuff inside your split loom. So once the harness is back in the engine compartment, I'll probably end up wrapping that because once I get up the firewall and get to this point, I got to incorporate the Jeep harness into this. That's why that part's not wrapped yet, and I got to extend some more pink power wires for the GM harness. And then I'm actually splitting this, so this is all the sensors and everything go through this loom and split off. That's the transmission leg there, and then all the engine management stuff is on the top up here, and then all these wires is everything that connects to the Jeep side of the wiring. So see, I got like speed signal, VSS, yeah, there's a bunch of stuff there's fan control stuff in there that I got to run to the other side too. So that all connects to, you can see over here, that all connects to all of this stuff on the Jeep side. So I still got to kind of decipher and make sure that I'm hooking all that crap up right. And I'm just going to kind of temporarily hook it up while I'm getting ready to test fire it, but I got to do a bunch of stuff before I test fire it. I got to get some O2 sensors. Well, I don't have to have O2 sensors in, but there's a few things I got to do before I can test fire this thing. Number one is I got to rebuild the transfer case. So I'm using my Jeep 231 transfer case. I got a 6-pinion planetary that's going to go in that, and the wide chain of gears out of a older 231 that came out of an S10. This is another little interesting part of the transfer case. I'll have an entire short video dedicated to the machining of that piece and this ring here, and I'll explain more about my idea and my experiment regarding this transfer case part here. So that's in an upcoming episode. This is my gauge cluster. So I did Intellitronics gauges, the set of 6 that are all the digital LED, segmented LED style gauges. Reason I went that way is mostly because of price. They were less than half the price of autometers, so that's why I did those. But dealing with Intellitronics as a company is a whole nother story. That was a complete pain in the ass. The short version is it took, I ordered them on eBay, and it took probably 3.5 months and 7 different shipments for them to get my order correct and to give me all gauges that worked correctly. So yeah, that was a nightmare. But they all work now, so we'll see how they go, how they look. They should function fine. So what else? A little update. So you saw the passenger side or driver side motor mount. Passenger side motor mount's another story. So I originally built the motor. So I'm using F-body or Camaro 2000 Camaro exhaust manifolds. They seem to fit fine. I test fit them in there and said, okay, they fit. And I took them out and threw them on the floor, and then proceeded to build the motor mounts and never checked fitment of the exhaust manifolds again while I was building them, which was really smart, as you'll see. So you can see on this, I had to notch my own motor mount to get the exhaust manifold to fit. So, I mean, it wasn't bad. I just notched it and put a little chunk of pipe in there to clear it. So it fits fine now, but that was a little oops. I also figured out, as far as the alternator is concerned, I had, my donor was an 05, and the 05 and up or 04 and up, somewhere in there, they all used what's called a generator battery control module, which is some deal that went around the either the positive or the negative cable coming off of the battery, and then it tied into the computer. So the alternator actually went to that GB, whatever the hell it's called, the control module. And then from that, it went over to the computer, and so it was controlled by the computer. And I had a 2-pin connector on my alternator. Did a bunch of research on that, and I could have hooked it up just straight to the computer, but everything that I read online said that it basically, if it didn't sense that other control module, the computer would put the voltage regulator into essentially a limp mode, and it would only charge at like 13.5 volts, which is not enough, especially when you're going to run a winch and lights and all that kind of stuff. So I've got another voltage regulator I ordered online, which fits the AD244 alternators, can have a 4-pin regulator in them, and this is just a DR44, but it's essentially it's a very similar or essentially the same alternator. But so I put a different voltage regulator in here with the 4-pin hookup so that it will charge correctly. So I hope I'm right on that. Let me grab the other regulator so you can see what I'm talking about. So this is the original one. Just had a 2-pin connector on it, and so you basically pop the back off and you take a couple of bolts out, and I had to trim the case part a little bit around there too to get the 4-pin connector in there versus the 2-pin, and then you have to desolder that joint and then solder the new one on, which, I mean, that's just takes a soldering iron, surprisingly. So anyway, that's what I did with that. So hopefully that works. We'll see. You can see I pulled my springs out of the front so that I could cycle the suspension up and down from full stuff to full droop, so that I could start working on some, I don't know if you'll be able to see it down in there, we'll go underneath and look. I started routing some exhaust under here, started cobbling together some exhaust out of a bunch of scraps that I had. So we'll see if this will show up underneath here. Hopefully there's enough light to see that, but you can see I got an exhaust pipe run to about right here, and then I have another piece. Stand by while I grab it. Got a Y pipe put in here, so hopefully you can see this. So you can see I had to run the exhaust down the frame rail, because most everybody runs their exhaust like right underneath the bell housing, but I didn't have enough room to do that. So anyway, I built this crossover pipe, and then my Y pipe is going to be on that side. I got to build hangers, and I'm going to order some flanges and stuff. This is all basically one piece right now, but obviously you can't do that, otherwise it won't fit or it won't come out. So anyway, let's roll out of here. So working on exhaust, trying to get that figured out. The passenger side is going to be easy. There's a ton of room over there. The driver's side was pretty tricky because I had to snake it down in between the drive shaft and the frame rail. And the way all the other guys do it, they run it right underneath the bell housing, and I had about that much room in between the bell housing in the front drive shaft because I set my motor lower than like the Novak mounts you can buy. I think it sets the motor quite high in the engine compartment, and so anyway, I set my motor a little bit lower, and so I didn't have enough room to go that route, but I'm hoping that'll work. I'm ordering a MagnaFlow high flow universal cat and a MagnaFlow muffler to put on it, and I gotta figure out, I gotta get the passenger side downpipe done, and then I can figure out where I'm gonna put my oxygen sensors. So anyway, it's coming along. Interior's still torn to bits. I did get the heater core back in. I replaced the heater core and then put the whole HVAC unit back in, so that's all done. And then you can see here, that's my plug for my gauge cluster. I used a 35 pin connector from DigiKey. I ordered from DigiKey, ordered all the connector and all the crimp on pins for it from there. Wasn't too bad. Connector was, I think, $15 or something, and the pins were super cheap, 5 cents a piece or something. So that worked out pretty good. And then that allowed me to run all these. And then I used a bunch of the existing cluster wires to run all this stuff through. And the connector's already back in, but I actually ran a bunch of all the dash connectors through the existing harness block or harness plug underneath the dashboard. So that was cool. In retrospect, I probably should have just run new stuff out into the engine compartment because it was kind of a pain in the ass figuring out what was what. Whatever, it'll work. So anyway, I probably showed this already, but I'll show it again. I got my 4-inch outlet on the airbox done, and I had a couple questions on this in my build thread. This came off of like a 91 Mitsubishi Galant, but there are actually a bunch of 90s vintage Mitsubishis that have these nice steel airboxes on them. The Eclipse and the Galant and the Mirage maybe, or Lancer, I don't know. There's a bunch of like early and mid 90s Mitsubishis that come with those nice steel airboxes on them. So if you're an off-road guy, or if you want to have one that you can customize, because all the other ones are plastic. So, and you can't really weld those because a lot of them are like a glass ball or glass fiber reinforced polypropylene, and so that's no glue will stick to it, and you also have to plastic weld it, or yeah, I don't know how else you're going to get it together. So anyway, that's the latest update. More to follow. Thanks for watching.